Welcome into another edition of the Two Growls, One Roar podcast. Today, we are here to get you caught up on all things Carolina Panthers with the offseason and the buzz heading into training camp. Let's go.
Brace yourself for the ultimate Carolina Panthers experience. Welcome to Two Growls, One Roar, the podcast that hits harder than a Luke Kuechly tackle. We're diving deep into the heart of Panther Nation, bringing you unrivaled passion, insider takes, and pure gridiron fire. From Wilmington to the cosmos, this is your home for the fiercest football talk east or west of Charlotte.
Hey, folks, welcome into the post-July 4th edition of the Two Growls, One Roar podcast. I believe it's been a week since I've recorded any content. I don't know. Days run together, but it's been roughly a week, which is a very long time for me. So I'm excited to get back on the mic, although, to be honest, there hasn't been a ton of news that's come through, but what we're going to do today is kind of talk through some of the storylines that have happened. Maybe you haven't been as in tune in the offseason, so we're going to get you up to speed on all things Carolina Panthers as we head in to training camp here in a few weeks. It is July. I cannot believe it. We have rookies reporting, veterans reporting, training camp right around the corner. And folks, let's not forget, FanFest is, now we're waiting on all the details, but FanFest will be August 2nd, which is a Saturday at Bank of America Stadium. So even though we do not have training camp open to the public, if you are in Charlotte or in the Charlotte area and you'd like to attend a practice, this is going to be your one opportunity to do so. So make sure you literally circle that on your calendars, put your reminders in. I'm guessing it should be a free event. We will see, but they do a pretty good job with the open practice. And then there's like a light show, at least that's the way it's been in years past. After, we're going to do our best to make it down there if possible. Also, for those of you that are watching today on YouTube as well as Spotify, you'll notice that we are back in proper form with our show lineup, folks. It's been a while. Appreciate you guys hanging in there. It's been a busy season, but I'm trying to build some good habits again as we get into the season because we have a lot to talk about. And without further ado, today's show lineup for you guys and for my audio listeners on Apple or wherever else you get your podcast. Talking through a few roster updates here. Sorry, the words are tough today. Apparently coming out of July 4th weekend, trying to break the rust off here. But a few roster updates, this idea of Bryce Young 3.0, but it's really the offensive evolution that we will anticipate this year. We're going to talk about that. And the defensive foundation, the pressure, literally getting pressure on opposing quarterbacks. Where do we sit on the defensive side of the ball? And I already gave you a little bit of a hint, but training camp preview. Now, before we get into this too far into what we're going to discuss today, I do want to plug that I am also working on the side for your 90-man roster preview. So you can anticipate, as I look at my calendar now, we've really got 2.5 weeks for me to get all this content together. I would say over starting this week, you're going to see some of those previews. So we do position groups, breaking down every single player on the roster, not just the names that you know, but the guys that are undrafted free agents, the borderline players. We go through every single one so that you're prepared, but also primarily so that I'm prepared as we get into camp. Now, I don't anticipate any crazy things happening, but there are some notable names. When we think about depth at the safety position, we think about linebackers, even some wide receivers, as we talk about that room that's just ridiculously crowded. We'll discuss that. So just want to plug that's going to be available. And if maybe you're a college football fan and you enjoy college football content, you can check out all the college football content that we're going to have coming out directly on the YouTube channel here, which is currently Two Growls, One Roar, but we are going to rebrand before the football season kicks off so that we have a more generic name. Don't worry, Two Growls isn't going anywhere. It'll still be here, but we're just going to make it easier for folks that want to branch out and find other content. Without further ado, folks, let's jump right in, folks. As I mentioned, we're back with graphics. Makes it easier for me and you. How about the latest buzz before we get too deep into where things sit Hey folks, a lot of buzz happening right now with the Bryce Young off-season voluntary workouts that were in Minnesota. You had Adam Thielen, Xavier Legette, Tedro McMillan. Those were the notable names, and there was quite a few guys up there working out, player-led effort, of course, building chemistry, elevating their play. We see this happening a lot. Guys go to places, you've got this period of time where nothing's really happening. We see a lot of the other clips with guys like Xavier Legette working out, and now fans just eating that up. I don't really buy into eating that up. He's working with the route god. If you've seen him and know what he does, I don't buy too much into it, only because I know these guys are working hard, and the people that are putting out the content and the clips and the videos and all that are just there to do what I do, build themselves up, make a name for themselves. Now, the route god's a little different because that's what he does. He coaches wide receivers, and that's what he's known for. But those clips are circulating, and I think we would anticipate now, and this is going to happen. Like, you're going to see this offseason chemistry, player-led workouts as they look to, build something heading into this year. You do have, this is a little while back, but you do have one of the unique roster additions that I wanted to call out, and it's through the International Pathway Program with the NFL, but he's 21 years old. Maz Mwansa. He has the international exemption, but he's, I believe, an accountant. Yes, an accountant with an opportunity to make it into the NFL through the International Pathway Program. So pretty cool there. And when you look at just everything that's happening right now, I do want to continue to emphasize the cultural shift that we are seeing. So a lot of these workouts we know are going to happen, but when you think about top down with Dan Morgan, Dave Canales, Brandt Tilis, all of them in their vision for a culture of accountability and growth, like, we're starting to see that shift, because, to be honest, I think we're all tired of being the laughing stock. And to be transparent, I don't think the Carolina Panthers are the laughing stock that some people think they are. I think maybe some people are just tapped in. I don't get into the beef that people like to do on X. That's like I'm not going to use the platform for that. It's just not me. But I have seen a lot of Panthers fans getting into it with other fan bases, comparing quarterbacks, like partially because people are bringing up old Bryce Young stats, or just looking at the box score, not seeing the progression that happened last year that we saw firsthand. And I get it. I think we're all tired of being, in general, the laughing stock that people see us as. But I think the direction is shifting. Is, again, we're starting to hear the media, and we're going to talk a little bit about it at the end, but the media shifting their mindset. They're getting a more optimistic approach on who the Carolina Panthers are going to be this year. Still a lot of football left to play in front of them to really figure this out, and hopefully they get off to a hot start, because if they don't, things get rough. But it's positive news. All right, let's actually get into some of the roster updates. And again, this is just kind of a larger summary, injury report, personnel moves. I mean, I could probably put down every single thing that's happened, but I just like to kind of jog your memory. And I know some of you guys are tapped in, and gals are tapped into this stuff. And, this is like secondary news to you. Doesn't mean anything, and that's cool. But for those of you who may not be as tapped in, I like to kind of take a second to think back to where the Panthers are, because we are entering this mode of coming into the season. Like, we're here, folks. It's coming around the corner, and the storylines are going to make themselves. But at least from what we know to what we see to where we're going, I like to have a very good foundation as it prepares us for this upcoming year. So the Panthers are returning their entire starting offensive line, and you talk about that being a rarity. We know that actually happened a few years ago, and then the bounce back to that was not great. Like, you brought everyone back, and they didn't perform as well as you want. We know Taylor Moehrig is probably, like, and I've already talked through this extensively, and we'll get into it in the positional group breakdowns. I am happy for Taylor Moehrig and him being back here and the money we're spending. And the stability that we bring and how unusual this is. It's going to be important for Bryce Young, but I do sometimes worry about Taylor Moton's health. And then, of course, we got the battle at the center position, which will be ongoing. And again, we're going to get into the Cade Mays, Austin Corbett conversation later. Cade Mays seems to be the front runner. That's what it's early, but Cade Mays leading the way. The positive of this is the offensive line that we have and that we are bringing back was one of the 8th best as rated by Pro Football Focus last season. It's one of the better offensive lines. And I mean, we saw that with Bryce Young when he kind of got his feet underneath him in the second stint as the quarterback in the second half of the season, with the running game, with Chuba Hubbard and his success. So all things considered, and then the addition of a lot of the nice pieces that we have on the offensive side of the ball, you really are setting yourselves up for a nice year. Personnel-wise, I mean, again, we're trying to hit on the high spots of some of the notable things. Probably could go through this in more detail, but of course, bringing back Jaycee Horn, Mike Jackson, those are big. We know we brought back Chuba Hubbard during the season. You have Tommy Tremble, who we're going to talk about in a second as he battles the injury. Tre'von Moehrig, one of the big acquisitions. Tershawn Wharton, Bobby Brown. He had really one of the most notable departures in Jadeveon Clowney. And up until this point, at least, I've kind of been in a black hole the last 4 or 5 days, but I have yet to see him get picked up on an NFL roster. So still monitoring that. I do think somebody's going to scoop him up as we get closer to camp. A team that's competing for a Super Bowl. I think there's enough left in the tank for him to contribute there. Injury reports. Jonathan Brooks, we know, is going to be out for the entire season. No surprise there. And it's good, given this injury report where it is today, good for the Carolina Panthers because there's not a lot. Derrick Brown, who suffered the meniscus tear back in week 1, should be ready to go for training camp. If he's not fully 100%, you would anticipate that he's ready to go by the time the season starts. Like, that's more than enough. That's a full year of recovery. So I'm not worried about or concerned about his progression. The one I am a little bit worried about, but we'll see as we get into training camp and get reports and updates on status of injuries. Is he going to be placed on the PUP? Is Tommy Tremble, who had a late surgery, made a decision with the team and the doctors, and they consulted him and decided to do that. So we'll see how that pans out. And then Tershawn McMillan, who was held out a few days, but then made it his comeback during minicamp. He should be good to go. So that is your latest news when it comes to the Carolina Panthers. Again, we're going to get really a status of where a lot of these guys sit when we get into training camp, because you're going to know, are these guys going to be placed on the PUP? We get to have a few press conferences. We'll start to get those coming in and hearing updates from the team on where everyone sits. So part of this Bryce Young 3.0 narrative that I have is like, what is the offensive evolution going to look like for the Carolina Panthers this season? Bryce Young's development has to be one of the bigger pieces. We do have the mailbag coming up as well. So if you are looking to be featured on the mailbag, you can reach out on any of the social platforms or directly on one of the YouTubes, leave a comment, whatever it is. I'll try to pick it up. Easiest place probably to get me is on X, but YouTube as well, or Spotify. Panthers committed to Young as their starter, which we know. I think a lot of folks are anticipating this big leap in his second year under Dave Canales. I know I am. We've talked about the strong finish and how that's fueling a lot of this optimism that we have, and the protection and continuity, not only on the offensive line, but the entire offense, and the addition of playmakers. And a lot of those playmaker additions have been at the wide receiver position. We now look at this deep and competitive wide receiving core, what we've called crowded and competitive, something that just hasn't been there. Of course, led with first-round pick Tershawn McMillan, 8th overall selection, 6'4", likely going to be your projected number 1. A big body target that Bryce Young has lacked. So as we talk about this evolution of Bryce Young 3.0, a lot of it has centered around these new additions and investments on the offensive side of the ball. Now, they weren't big spenders this offseason in free agency, but I think they did enough through the draft bringing in Dowdle and bringing back what they already had to set themselves up. Again, we talk about getting deeper into the playbook. We talk about, a better understanding, a better feel for all those things. Panthers are setting themselves up well where they sit right now. So I'm excited for what we're calling 3.0. Leggett, who we all think and believe is going to have a significant increase in production this year. And of course, led by veteran Adam Thielen. We haven't even gotten into Coker, to Moore, to Jimmy Horn Jr., to Hunter Renfrow. Again, it is a very competitive room, something the Panthers have lacked. And I still believe when you talk about the offense for the Carolina Panthers that we likely are going to see an offense that is going to put up maybe 25, 26 points per game. Like, I think that is how good this team is going to be. That's just the bar that I'm setting, to go from 13 points to 20. And now as you kind of figure it out and you have this better version of Bryce Young under Dave Canales in year 2 with him, I think we're going to see another notch of improvement. And like I said, I'm not here to come out and say that Bryce Young's an MVP candidate or anything close to that, but I do have this firm belief that Bryce Young is going to shock quite a few people in the NFL this year. And that's part of the reason there's a lot of optimism, and part of the reason why I think the Carolina Panthers are finally headed in the right direction as an organization. And we can't talk about the offense without the backfield dynamic and the run game emphasis. Again, I think this year, more so than last, we're going to continue to see that heavy emphasis on the run game, running back by committee with, of course, Chuba Hubbard leading the way, 1,000-yard back. You have Rico Dowdle, another 1,000-yard back, and ETN in the mix, who you just drafted. So it's going to be very competitive in that backfield. Still looking for if Raheem Blackshear is going to make the cut as a returner. It's one of the decisions, and we'll get into the previews of where I think it's going to be tough between ETN and Blackshear, but I think ETN may have the upper hand. We'll see. Blackshear's a top 10 returner in return yards in the NFL with kicks. And with the change to the kickoff rule for touchbacks to be moved out even further, we know we're likely going to see a lot more chances at returns this year. And we've already mentioned the Jonathan Brooks injury, and I don't know if it's increased pressure. I think it's just additional pressure, and that's why the Panthers decided to invest the way they did in bringing in Rico Dowdle and drafting ETN in this year's draft. So exciting times. The Bryce Young 3.0. Can't wait to get into the official 90-man roster preview talking about Bryce Young and what we expect from him this year. We spent a lot of time talking about offense. Of course, the main focus for us to figure out how good this team is going to be, the catalyst of how good this team is going to be, is the defensive identity. There's a new vision here led by Dan Morgan, like we said, Dave Canales, Brandt Tilis, challenging the roster, taking away that laughingstock label of, the Carolina Panthers of years past. They're building that accountability, adding competition, high character players. That's a lot of their focus, plugging in these types of guys, getting younger in a lot of key areas. So getting younger, but also having a veteran presence and, seeing how this thing meshes together. Reinforcements and run defense were the main priority of this team. That's where this team struggled last year. Points allowed, rushing defense. So the Carolina Panthers go out, like we said, they get Turk, they get Bobby Brown, and that's in addition to bringing back Derrick Brown, in addition to having A'Shawn Robinson, going out and getting Pat Jones, drafting 2 outside linebackers to help. Now, again, your outside linebackers not necessarily your run stoppers. Sometimes they got to set the edge in a 3-4 defense and contain, but getting to the quarterback, getting pressure. Those were the things. Getting pressure on the quarterback and stopping the run. And then the secondary. So bolstering the secondary with Tre'von Moehrig, re-signing Jaycee Horn and Mike Jackson, like we said. Now, still TBD. Carolina Panthers sniffing around for a safety. Are they going to end up finding one? Maybe. Maybe there's one that comes in very last minute. It's always a possibility. Some notable names still on the market. Carolina Panthers can still find a guy if they want to. We're getting that closer to that time with camp. To me, when we talk about the Carolina Panthers in 2025, and again, we can talk about the defense, how improved we anticipate them being, which I do think they're going to be improved in the investments that were made. I also think the success of the defensive unit for the Carolina Panthers, part of it is going to be on your rookies and some of your second-year players, your Tre'von Wallaces of the world, as well as what we have talked about with Princely Umanmielen, Nick Scorton. You hear about them studying the playbook after hours. I think a lot of folks anticipate them having an immediate impact out of the gates. Now, how soon it will take, I don't know. But with DJ Wanham kind of having some things flutter up and down, there's a possibility that one of the two rookies is going to be starting. And by the end of the year, you could have both of these guys as your starting outside linebackers. Now, the defensive identity really resides with Ejiro Evero in this 3-4 scheme and being able to integrate this new talent into the roster, because they have greatly struggled. They have. But I have said, I don't know that we know who Ejiro Evero is because the sample size is so small. I do think we anticipate, and I do, that this team is going to be much more improved on the defensive side of the ball, and they are going to be able to figure this thing out. Closing out today's episode, we will talk through training camp and, leading up into the season. We've got a few highlights for you guys. I've already touched base on a few of these. Also, just media expectations for this season. A lot of the projections that we are seeing have the Panthers sitting in that 7-10 mark, a 2-win improvement over last year. It's varied, though. I mean, there's some lines carrying right now 5.3, 6.5, 7, 7.5 in that range. I do think the Carolina Panthers, to me, are going to sit around that 8 to 9 win mark. That's at least the target that I have for them this year. Playoff chances are still considered low as of right now at around 3%. And there are some analysts who still grade the Carolina Panthers skill position as the worst in the NFC South, which is questionable. But then at the same time, I do look at the Atlanta Falcons, as much as you may hate them. Pretty good core there. Talking about offensively, same thing with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I don't think you could convince me that the New Orleans Saints, although they do have talent, is that much better than the Carolina Panthers group where it is today. And there's also this guy named Bryce Young, which I do think is going to finally figure it out. Some folks see this as a bridge year focused on Bryce Young's growth and a defensive improvement to really prepare this team for 2026. I don't. I do think the Panthers are, and again, I'm a little bullish right now. A lot of this can change, but I do think the Panthers can win this year. I don't think it has to be next year. But at the same time, I also understand that, yes, it may be a 2026 goal to realistically look at this team as being competitive and able to really take the next step. But I do think they're going to do it. I think they're going to be in a lot of football games. There's going to be a lot of fun watching this team on Sundays. As we mentioned, training camp coming right around the corner. Rookies on the 21st, veterans the 22nd. Camp begins on the 23rd. Remember, there's no fan access in 2025, potentially into 2026 as well. At least that's what it says. The only in-person event and fan opportunity outside of being able to go to a preseason game is going to be FanFest at Bank of America Stadium on August 2nd. So right around the corner. As always, folks, appreciate you guys tuning into the show. We've got a mailbag episode coming up probably in the next day or two. We're also going to get into the 90-man roster preview finally. And anything that comes up between now and then as we get ready for training camp, we'll be back with more Panthers news. As always, this is Carolina Dad. Y'all have a good one.